Hi everybody, it's Jeanette and I am here to cover your Chapter 9 lecture on direct strategies. And direct strategies are interventions and work you're doing directly with the client. So when we're talking about this chapter, what I'm hoping that you're going to pull away is understanding, which we kind of have already established a groundwork for, that human services work is vast. It covers a lot of different roles and titles. There's no one definition that wholly defines human services, but effectively, we work in a number of different agencies and fields, and so we're going to learn some terminology that's commonly associated across those fields. I also want you to understand the goals of a caseworker as we are engaging in this direct work with clients. Understand the casework process and the steps involved, and then also look at both informal and formal ways to evaluate your agency, your program, your services, so that you can continuously improve and ensure that you're always offering the best available service to clients as possible. So when we talk about the different titles or roles, you might have someone in the field called a caseworker, social worker, counselor, advocate, case manager, hotline worker, family resource worker, addictions counselor, caretaking. Educators can be part of human services, whether it's in early childhood education or whether it's in K through 12 or even higher education, right? Anywhere where we are supporting the well-being of others, helping to address injustices, helping to advocate for clients, and that is, in fact, human services work. So the field is definitely broad. We all have common roles, right? Regardless of what our job title is or our specific assignments. Ultimately, what we're trying to do is we're helping clients address the various problems, right? That may include helping them process the emotions surrounding those challenges, helping them manage both the internal and external pressures being placed upon them, and helping them gain access to important resources that can work towards solutions. As with all, human challenges, there's biological elements, there's emotional elements, and there's social and environmental elements. And those all can contribute to our stress levels. They all can undermine our well-being and our ability to make reasoned decisions. They impact our functioning, both psychologically, emotionally, cognitively, intellectually, which spills over into our personal and professional lives. And so when we talk about what we do in human services, we're addressing the symptoms of those challenges, both on an individual scale and on a larger social, societal, systemic scale as well. So our work is important work. In this chapter, you're introduced to a concept called task-focused casework. And if you look at the problems that we deal with in our field, we look at individuals having lack of resources or the lack of skills necessary to cope with or address the problems at hand. So it comes down to really needing access to training, education, support, and added resources to help people thrive and be successful in their lives. And we are likely in that process to deal with a lot of different problems, whether it's addiction, whether it's a healthcare issue, whether it's a housing shortage or need, whether it's an employment or vocational training need, whether it's sexual assault and the traumas that remain, whether it's a lack of finances due to any number of reasons and challenges that people face. But all of these life problems can be tied back to lack of resources or lack of skills and educational needs to deal with those circumstances. And I say educational because even skills are taught by family, right? For me, when I talk about my emotional coping toolbox that I developed growing up, it was limited. Why? Because I didn't have the healthiest environment. So therefore, just stepping into adulthood, I lacked the same types of communication skills, the same type of networking skills, the same type of confidence and self-efficacy that maybe other teens had at that age, coming out of healthy, thriving homes where they had lots of successful people in their lives that were part of their social capital and their networks. So self-determination was something that I struggled with, and many of our clients might struggle with, in that people may not know how, in a healthy way, to sit and reflect on their circumstances and consider alternative solutions. They may not know how to practically reason through those alternatives, and they may need modeling, mentoring, coaching, explicit education and training on just how to do that. So as a human service professional, you can ask the questions to stimulate their intrigue, to stimulate that reflection. You can give them information, encouragement, and support to help them learn how to find that belief within themselves, to motivate themselves so that they can be self-determined, so that they can figure out their own solutions and assess their problems in a reasonable way, so that moving forward, they won't find themselves in the situation that they're in, or they'll know how to navigate that situation more clearly and resolutely. So here's some desirable outcomes that we want to kind of help clients achieve ultimately through our relationships. First, we want them to be able to identify, recognize, label, and express their negative emotions. And ideally, we want to give them the tools, including self-awareness and reframing on how to change that negative emotional state. When I'm experiencing depression, fear, hopelessness, it's not healthy to maintain myself in that state, right? I think it's normal for the human condition for us to experience negative emotional states. This notion that we're all supposed to be happy and content all the time is a false expectation, and sometimes we impose that on others and ourselves. So experiencing negative emotional states, does that mean I'm depressed? I'm clinically depressed? No, but can I experience periods of depression? 100%. Is it healthy for me to stay in those periods of depression or those periods of sadness or those periods of fear or hopelessness? Absolutely not. So we definitely want to help help clients identify those states, label, recognize, express them, and then ideally change them. We also want to increase self-awareness of our circumstances and again reflect on what possible courses of action we can pursue. We want to be able to reason through the options, not only propose them, identify them, but also consider the pros and cons. What if we take this step as opposed to this step? And then we want to empower the client to make better and decisions for themselves. Those are things we want to try to put into the client's realm so that we're not making decisions for them. Making decisions for them does not improve their decision-making skills. It doesn't improve their self-determination or their self-efficacy. We are not here to rescue them. We are here to empower them, to support them, to encourage them. And then we effectively want to support their ability to implement that decision. So not only do we want to take them to a point where they can make a good decision for themselves, but we also want to help them turn that decision into an action plan and start to carry out and implement that decision, including overcoming barriers they may face along the way. When you're talking about helping clients change their emotional states, it's important to not tell a client how they should or should not feel. All feelings are valid. That needs to be expressed to clients. They need to be validated. Now, are all feelings healthy? No, but it's important not to minimize their feelings, minimize their experiences or their perspectives, and invalidate them, because that will undermine their self-confidence and their self-determination. Rather, it's important to encourage them to be aware, to recognize, express their feelings, label their feelings, right? We want to assure them that there are no right or wrong. All feelings are valid. We want to help them understand what may have triggered or inspired that particular feeling. Is it a healthy trigger? Is it something they're going to encounter in the future? Do we have to really look at maybe reframing cognitively how they're viewing that circumstance? Or do we have to maybe focus on how to encourage them to have healthier, positive, constructive reactions? So we definitely want to help them process, express, and process those feelings in a healthy, constructive way without judgment from us. Not only do we need to encourage them to express their feelings, right? But we also have to help them gain some healthy perspective of the situation, right? So healthy perspective of themselves and their emotional states, and healthy perspectives of the situations. That includes understanding other people's perspectives sometimes. That includes helping them to understand maybe the roles and responsibilities of other people, helping them maybe put themselves in the shoes of the other people in this situation, maybe help them gain some added perspective and empathy, and at least some insight into the situation, and maybe why the options are what they are, or why the reactions are what they are. But ultimately, all the knowledge and training that we acquire throughout our education and our professional career, because we'll do additional training throughout our careers. We'll do special certifications in different strategies. We'll do more in-depth, localized training addressing specific human service issues. And all of that knowledge and training is intended for you to pass that on to your client. Share that knowledge, share those resources that you acquire throughout your career, and then help them gain that perspective using the strategies that you've learned and the skills that you're developing. Help them gain perspective on maybe the fears that might be inhibiting them, and offer them access to those positive emotions to hope and believe in themselves and have the confidence they need to move forward, to plan and to carry out the plans in a healthy, successful way. So we are ultimately going to be helping clients problem solve our entire careers. And while we might be learning healthy approaches to problem solving, we ultimately need to pass on those skills and approaches to our clients. So one of the first things you have to do is first sort out whatever biases you have. I think it always starts with understanding yourself, your bias, and helping the client to do the same. helping them sort out misinformation, misconceptions, inaccurate information as they're exploring their analysis of the situation and the possible options they have in front of them. We have to really dispel any myths or misconceptions they might have and teach them to do that themselves. Teach them to step back, just as I am you, to step back and reflect on their own internal biases and to try to embrace an open, non-judgmental perspective that allows them to objectively look at the data and work through inaccurate information and decipher inaccurate from accurate information. Help them get in touch with their own feelings, recognize their feelings, name their feelings, and then sort through the possible options and consequences in order to decide what's best for them, right? I have to be able to evaluate things in an objective way. And so I have to be able to separate myself from my bias, from my emotions in order to do that. And sometimes that might mean talking through it with other people, but still having enough confidence and enough empowerment where I'm going to make the decision for myself. And that's what we have to take our clients through. And so when we're talking about implementing decisions once they've made them, then we can help them through that process of implementation. We can help them break down, they decided this is where I want to go. Well, let's break that down into smaller achievable steps. Let's discuss those things. Let's look at what skills are needed, what resources are needed. And let's go through those steps and evaluate those steps closely and map out a plan that has, the larger goal and then the sub goals, and then more reasonable timeframes that we can develop those that we can achieve those sub goals. You also want to offer emotional support. So as they're going through implementation, there's a lot of emotions they might be experiencing, including fear, right? And that's viable. It's hard to step out on your own and try new things sometimes. It's hard to break free from old habits and old burdens and break free of toxic relationships. It's hard to do those things. And a lot of times our clients are going to be breaking free, maybe for the first time in their lives. So you want to offer them emotional support, but at the same time, it has to be authentic. It can't be just false assurance. It can't be just generic, right? Really look at them and their individual strengths and what they've done well and showcase that. Like, make sure you're highlighting that to them on a regular basis and cheer them on. Just as we want to break the larger goal into smaller steps, you also want to reinforce those smaller growth areas. And so give them that encouragement for the baby steps that they're making and for the signs of growth that you're seeing along the way. And then model healthy behavior, model healthy communication, model a process of being introspective and recognizing your bias. Model a perspective of questioning whether you have an accurate understanding and seeking out additional information from qualified sources. Model that for them. Offer, of course, referrals along the way. Help them get in touch with those referrals. We'll talk more about that a little bit later. But as they approach barriers, take them through a reasoned process where they can evaluate those barriers and determine solutions that they can implement. So let's talk about casework. So first of all, when you're assigned a case, you want to do some background research. You want to prepare for that first meeting. You want to be as informed as possible. So you want to thoroughly read through the file. You want to read through all the case notes, whatever reports are available through you. But you want to have as much understanding as possible. Also make a list of what's not there. What information do you need? So that when you meet the person and you interview and you do a case history with the person, you know what's missing and what additional data would be helpful for you to support them. You want to focus on relationship building. You want to build trust through authenticity, through healthy communication, through being reliable and someone that they can count on. And that includes overcoming some of the challenges we talked about in the previous chapter, where they might have some bias against the system. They might have some some perfectly acceptable and reasonable distrust of the system, and we want to be mindful of those things. Then you want to go through a process of creating contracts with the client, where you are actually building out expectations with them. You're educating them about what they're subjected to in terms of any requirements and expectations or conditions that they have to meet, particularly like if it's tied to the criminal justice system or to child protective services. There are certain things that may be mandated by the courts or required of them, through previous caseworker expectations. And so we want to be clear on those things. We also want to be clear on what we can offer them and what our role is. Then we want to create an action plan and what steps are going to be taken. We need to have clear timelines. We need to have clear definitions of those steps, clear expectations on who's doing what, how it should be done, when it should be done, and how we can be there as a resource to support along the way. We need to put that plan into action and support them through the implementation. And then we need to evaluate our process. We need to evaluate our agency, the supports and resources and systems we have in place, and how we might make improvements for the next client or for our ongoing support of this client. So let's break down those steps a little bit. When we talk about getting prepared, preparatory empathy is something that you want to really embrace. So I'm going to ask you to consciously avoid being judgmental and being, biased in your examination of the facts. Do your best to study the materials and the data that's available to you in an open, compassionate way. Okay, so as emotions enter your realm or cognitive thoughts, right, judgments enter your realm, be aware of those, recognize those. Think about how you're responding to clients' words, how you're responding to the behaviors, how you're responding to the words of other people that might be generating reports that you're reading, right? So definitely be self-aware and be on alert. Try to look at how they might perceive something or represent something, or misunderstandings that may have occurred or may occur between you and the person. Where are the points of tension or potential conflict? Where might they be frustrated, upset, discouraged? Anticipate those things so that if there are things that we need to move forward with, then you're going to have to be able to manage those emotions, help the client manage those emotions in a healthy, constructive way. But you're going to have to do that through validating them, through understanding them, and having some compassion toward them. Evaluate whatever referrals have been made, what's worked, what hasn't. Look at their entire record and see what kind of data is available for you in the form of case notes, test results, interview notes. Make sure you're recognizing that some of that data is objective and it's just fact-based, and some of it is subjective and it's qualitative opinions that are being shared by some other individual completing the report. Now, ideally, they were using the objective approach to documentation that we taught you, but that's not always the case, right? So you might see how other people have documented or presented your client in a way that may not be favorable. And you have to be able to sort through that, set that aside, and come to them with an open mind. I try to do this in work environments. Someone might have a reputation. I might have a reputation, right? And people who maybe had a negative experience with me, particularly in a situation where I functioned as an advocate, they might tell other people I'm difficult, I'm uncooperative, I'm hard to work with. I'm not any of those things. However, I am an advocate. I will speak up. I will ask questions. I will challenge what I consider to be inequitable systems. And so that's part of my job as an equity practitioner, as a social worker, as an advocate. So be skeptical when others give you opinions of your client and try to remain open toward them. As I mentioned, look at what data is not there and gather your own data. Do your intake interview, look at what additional information you need, look at assessing their needs and how you might be able to support and fit their need. What resources do you have that might help them address the problems that they're facing, right? You want to zero in on the immediate problem. Don't be too zeroed in and narrow that you're not seeing other related problems, because often problems come in this complex enmeshed way where you're not just solving one problem, you're also solving multiple other problems because your one problem might be a symptom of more complex problems, right? So look at what's already been done, what hasn't been done. Look at what resources they've tried. Even if they tried a particular agency, maybe you have a person at the agency with which you have a really strong relationship. You're very confident that they might bring a different lens and perspective. It's okay to go back and try another referral with another approach or another person. Also, you might be able to give them some new perspective and skills that they can take into that new referral or that previous referral and maybe have a different outcome. You might also want to conduct home visits. And again, we know how valuable those visits can be because it gives us a bigger picture and it gives us more data and more information on the various dynamics that they might face, and therefore the support and resources that might be needed to help them deal with those environmental stressors. Step 2 is building supportive relationships. We already know that it's important to be warm and responsive with our clients. No different, there you go. No different than like parenting styles, right? And we don't in any way want to act like a parent. We don't want to create that superiority or hierarchy, but we do want to create that support, that warmth, that responsiveness of authoritative parenting. We do want our clients to know that they're respected, to know that they're supported, and to know that we're going to give them honest, authentic, care and service, and respect them and have compassion for their humanity. We, of course, want to use those communication skills, those active listening skills that we talked about. We want to listen and observe, and we want to reflect back what we're hearing, right? We want to reframe it, paraphrase it, and explain how we're understanding the circumstances and what they've shared with us. We definitely want them to feel open and safe with us, to be able to express their emotions. And sometimes that might be giving them the time and space to put it into words, right? To recognize it and try to label it and explain it. And we might offer them, but let them process and digest it first. And don't try to make assumptions, avoid assumptions, right? Don't try to assume how they're feeling, read or anticipate how they're feeling. Rather, ask questions, open-ended questions that allow them to just talk. And then you can help them maybe find words that might be more descriptive of what they're feeling. You want to make sure you're explaining the reason for your visits, what your key goals are, what you want to object, and every time you interact with them, they should know what the immediate goal is, and then how that fits into maybe our long-term goal. You always want to be posing questions, helping them think about alternative perspectives, consider other solutions or courses of actions or resources or services that they have not yet utilized. What are the other ways that they can start thinking about addressing any challenges and just becoming more successful in achieving their desired outcome? Definitely want to admit your own limits. You don't know everything. It's impossible to know everything. That's okay. You need to model that for the client and also help them to understand their own limits. Model for them that you're going to ask for help and encourage them to also engage in that behavior as well. Always protect confidentiality. Always make sure that you're being very clear and letting them know what you have to disclose and when you have to disclose it. Don't, they would share something with you and then now you leave the situation and now you go report it. No, at the time they disclose it with you, let them know that you have to report it and why you have to report it. Don't wait until it's already reported. They need to understand what your limits are, what your requirements are, and what the limits of confidentiality are. And then be someone they can rely on. If you say you're going to get back to them on something, then get back to them. Do it in a timely manner. Don't make them feel like they're not important or not significant or they can't rely on you. That's not okay. You are helping them rebuild their sense of hope and purpose and direction. So make sure you're a reliable resource for them. Then there's contracting. These are the agreements that we make with the clients, right? This is our building an action plan. And you have to make sure that you're negotiating that contract. They are a part of that relationship. It's a partnership with you. It's not you dictating to them, right? It's you negotiating that contract. And it might be making revisions along the way. Never go into it with assumptions. Make sure you clearly understand what you know, what they know, and they know what you know and what they know. And you know what each other wants and expects from the other party. So, and you might need to help negotiate a contract that they're making with others, not just you and what service you're providing, but also they might need to do a contract that involves other people, and you want to help facilitate that conversation so all parties involved understand what's expected of them and how we need to collectively work together and create this mutual understanding and agreement of our various roles, tasks, and even norms. I call them norms, social norming, where we want to create group norms. We want to create our agreements on how we're going to engage one another and interact with one another. But this casework is a collaborative process. It does require mutual commitment and a mutual agreement to the work. So you and the person you're supporting, your client, need to have really clear and explicit boundaries with one another. Make sure you're mapping out what you will do, right? Specific, clear activities that you will engage in. Again, acknowledging your limits, and then what the client is expected to do. Talk about whatever mandates have been imposed upon them by the court, what that looks like, be very clear and explicit. It should be operationally defined. Don't make assumptions that they know. Make sure any time frames and deadlines are discussed. Make sure you're checking their progress along the way, because they may face barriers and not feel comfortable addressing those with you, or they may not feel hopeful, and they may not feel that there's a value and a purpose in addressing it because they don't feel like it'll ever get fixed. So checking in with them along the way to see how it's coming is really helpful, so you can help them address any challenges along the way. And then if your agency has a particular philosophy or requirement, expectation, you need to be clear and transparent about that as well. And different agencies have different requirements. They have different cultures and philosophies. So be clear and transparent, particularly if it's a faith-based agency and there's expectations around what is deemed moral. You know, if there's morality expectations, be clear about those, because it may be that the client may not have that same definition, and so you want to make sure that they are clearly understanding expectations. Also, decide the rules of the relationship in terms of how much time you're committing, how many sessions there will be, how long you're going to have those sessions, how frequently you're going to have those sessions, where you're going to meet. Additionally, make sure that you have decided how you're going to document those meetings, and you're appropriately addressing it with the client, getting permission where needed, particularly if you're going to be recording. And then you're discussing the confidentiality very explicitly and openly. That's part of the contract. Particularly if you move into like a counselor type role and they're sharing very intimate personal information, they need to understand when you're going to break confidentiality and why. And then talk about the things that might be hindering effective relationships. Address them head on. Talk about how you're going to address those things. What's going to make both of you comfortable so that you can move forward and have a successful working relationship. Of course, if there's fees that they're expected to pay, fines that they're expected to pay, make sure that you're addressing that as well. You're discussing billing, you're discussing payment arrangements, and you're helping them put in even a budgeting plan so that they can get that taken care of on time as expected, so they can meet their end of the contract. The next step is creating that action plan. You have the long goal, but you might want to break it up into smaller goals. Look at how we can address this challenge one step at a time. Look at the finances, look at the social resources, dynamics, even conflicts and challenges they might be facing, their living situation. Is it supportive? What barriers might be there? What kind of working, what kind of work are they doing? What expectations or challenges that might impose? And if they're a parent, or, they have children, or maybe they're caring for a parent, or let's say there's a parent involved because they're living with a parent. So you need to understand the various roles that they're playing and how that's impacting their overall situation and ability to work through their challenge. You need to help them prioritize, help them determine what their priorities are. You need to understand what their priorities are, and then how they might prioritize in terms of managing those competing goals, all those things that are demanding their time and attention. How can you help them focus and prioritize in the context of all these other things that are placing demands on their life? Help them consider alternative plans, strategies, and resources maybe that they haven't considered before, or maybe reconsider it with a new light or new perspective. Make sure that you're evaluating the pros and cons of each part of the plan, right? Help them anticipate challenges, help them prepare with reasoned responses, like how are we going to respond when we might face rejection, right? Or if they tell us no, what are our other options? Where else can we go? So make sure you're mapping out those steps one by one. And then we need to work toward implementation. And they need our support through implementation. They need a sounding board to talk through their emotions, their feelings, make sense of it all, put that into words. They need a coach to encourage them, support them, motivate them, cheer them on, and maybe even hold them accountable. And they need an advocate that's going to speak up and address injustices, inequities, inadequate resources, and try to find additional resources that can support them. So you are there as a means. Look at it like you're a bank and they come to you for those referrals, those resources, whether it's knowledge, whether it's a service, whether it's a person, whatever they need to fill a gap. So how do we give a good referral? First of all, we write it down. If you can do a warm handoff and introduce them to someone and take them to a particular agency or person, great. If not, call that person, call that agency, introduce them, make that connection, help them create a first appointment, and then talk about barriers they might face to getting to that appointment, whether it's childcare, whether it's transportation. Help them address those barriers so they can get there. And then check back. How did it go? And what did you learn? What resources did they provide? How can they help? How can they help you achieve your goals? And then get feedback. Did they treat you kindly? Were they respectful? You want to make sure you're referring your clients to places that will treat them humanely, decently, who will be reliable referrals and resources. And then you want to get that feedback to that agency so that they can make continuous improvement as well. And that's part of evaluating. We want to hear from clients what went well, what didn't, what worked, what didn't, right? We want to get feedback from other professionals that we're engaging with. What can we do differently? How was the interaction? How was the service? Did you feel like you were treated kindly, compassionately? Was it dealt with in a timely manner, right? Get feedback. Create healthy professional relationships with your colleagues where they feel comfortable coming to you and pointing out problems in your own agency, right? You definitely want to have those informal connections as well as creating formal evaluation processes, right? Every year, every 6 months, every other month, whatever structure your agency has put in place, look at what other agencies are doing. Look at third-party agencies who can come in and evaluate the effectiveness of your work, who will look at the data, dive into the data, who will gather qualitative and quantitative data from clients and from the community to help understand how you might continuously improve your agency. Be willing to commit to ongoing change within your institution and within your own process and service, because we always want to be striving toward the best work and best service possible for our clients. So I'm going to close with a new quote. And I want to just share a little bit about what this means. So it's a privilege to be able to bear witness to someone's story when they may not have had the chance to tell it before. So many of your clients may never have had a voice before. They may never have had someone that cared what they thought or what they had to say. They may not have ever had someone that valued their perspective, their insight, their lived experiences, and the value they bring to conversations, to circumstances, solutions. And so be that person for them. Be that person. Be the person that gives them their voice to tell their story, and be that person who recognizes what an honor and privilege it is to be part of that journey and to hear that story and be that cheerleader to encourage them and cheer them on. I did change this quote to coincide with the interview, to close the interview Chapter 8 lecture, and it will continue to be part of our theme for this module. So thank you so much for wanting to be part of this work and for the humanity and compassion you bring to looking at social problems and how you can help to solve those and help other people in this world. It's an honor and a privilege to be part of your stories and to hear your stories in the work that you submit and the conversations that we have. And I'm so thankful and proud to be working with each and every one of you. Thank you.